Well, joining me now to discuss the changes to the alcohol industry is Tara Nurin. Tara is a beer and wine contributor to Forbes magazine. Tara, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
So break down what's been happening with the liquor, wine and beer sales during the pandemic. It was seen as an early winner of lockdowns, but which categories have really thrived and which ones have suffered?
So this was probably the biggest myth and the biggest source of arguments that I got into all of last year. We kept seeing the reports that alcohol sales were booming, and the confusion was that alcohol sales in liquor stores were booming, but the entire, what we call in the States, on-premise category, that's when you go to a restaurant, a concert, a sporting event, that was decimated. So the way it ended up shaking out, alcohol sales overall in the United States grew 3% last year, and that's really due to the strength of spirits, because what we saw is that spirits increased, and we're talking volume here, not dollars. Spirits increased 5.3%, but wine was flat and beer was down 3%. So spirits were really the winner last year, and it was kind of a wash and a disappointing year for the other two major categories.
So then, do you see those trends continuing now that the lockdowns are ending and people are really getting back out to restaurants and perhaps not drowning their sorrows as much?
Well, something that we say a lot here is that the pandemic really accelerated a lot of trends that were already starting to happen. So spirits was kind of gobbling up market share for beer for quite some time. So I do think the popularity of spirits is going to continue. I think wine will remain decently flat for the next few years, and same with beer. It's just on kind of shaky ground for a while. The thing that's changing with dining, however, is that analysts are predicting that dining out is going to become more of a special occasion than something you just do all the time. And what that means is that people are going to tend to buy one or two pricier drinks, probably a cocktail or an expensive glass of wine when they go out to dinner, instead of maybe 4 beers or something like they would have before.
Now, in terms of other changes, talk about the changes that various states have made to their alcohol laws over this past year and the significance.
Sure. This is something that I think is really cool, to be honest. A lot of states, as you mentioned in your lead, did loosen up their liquor laws for the pandemic, and we're seeing a lot of states extend those liberal laws either temporarily for 1 or 2 years or actually make them permanent. Just today, Illinois was a state, that's where Chicago is, to make some of its liberalized alcohol laws permanent. And I guess let me back up a second and tell you just very quickly the two major ones that we saw come into play. One was to-go cocktails. Restaurants could serve you spirits, and in some states they could actually make you a drink and put it in a plastic cup with a straw, and in some cases cover it with saran wrap and then hand it to you, which is not something we're used to doing in most parts of the United States. The other thing was home delivery became legal in a lot of states. So if I own a brewery, I was for the first time able to just run an employee over to your house and drop a case off for you, as well as third-party alcohol delivery systems. You mentioned Drizzly. So obviously, a lot of the liquor lobbying associations are pushing very, very hard to get governors to maintain these liberalized laws, and it's looking really well. It's looking really good for the industry. Let's see, a couple weeks ago, Maryland allowed restaurants to keep selling to-go cocktails for at least 2 more years.
Right.
And it joined 20 states that have already approved measures that will keep them around, keep to-go cocktails around.
Now, what about some of the other parts of the industry, like wineries, that really rely heavily on the tourism that comes with alcohol to boost revenue? How have they weathered this period?
Yeah, well, it's a great question, especially with wine, because if you look at where the concentration of wineries are in the United States, they're in California. And California was the first state to lock down. It was it had the strictest lockdowns. And so there really was almost no winery tourism at all for more than a year. I think it's just now opening back up. So all of those revenues were lost. However, it was counterbalanced by the fact that all but about 7 states can receive out-of-state wine shipments to people's homes. So let's say I would have normally taken a trip to Napa Valley to buy my wine. Instead, me as the wine consumer, I was ordering a lot of boxes to be sent to my house. And that really kept the wine industry in this country afloat. As for what happened at breweries, yes, most of the tap rooms had to shut down for a long time. Right. And what they were able to do was pivot to canning their beers and selling them to go right out the door and selling them in liquor stores if they hadn't before. So luckily, wine and beer was able to survive much better than anyone expected because of the changes they were able to make to counteract the loss of foot traffic.
Now, just very quickly, I just want to mention some of the challenges, obviously, that come with an uptick in alcohol sales. We did see an uptick in alcohol-related liver disease diagnoses since the pandemic, and also some airlines, Southwest and American, pausing serving alcohol due to an uptick in unruly passengers who have obviously everyone's been through a very tough year. Any thoughts, just quickly, on how to manage some of these relaxed rules responsibly?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I don't think we do a very good job of self-policing anymore as humans. So, I mean, obviously, moderation. I do know, as I mentioned before, that a lot of the claims of excessive drinking, at least here in the States, turned out to be quite overblown. And I'm also anecdotally seeing a lot of people I know and reading about statistics that show that a lot of people, especially millennials and younger here in the States, are not drinking very much compared to, say, my generation and baby boomers above me. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's just mostly personal responsibility. Right. Don't be an idiot. And I don't really think it's going to be like an intense problem that some people were predicting.